I still remember the sound of laughter, how it stopped the moment my brother called me a burden. It wasn't just his words that broke me that night, it was the silence that followed, the silence of a family that agreed with him. We were at the dinner table, celebrating his big promotion. Everyone was raising toasts, until I said something as small as, "I'm proud of you, Ryan." He looked at me, smiled that cruel little smile, and said, "Proud of me? You should be thanking me for carrying you your whole life." The room froze. My mother lowered her eyes. My father cleared his throat but said nothing. And I just sat there, pretending the tears in my eyes were from laughter. That was the moment I realized I wasn't part of this family's pride. I was part of their embarrassment. People say words fade with time. But his words didn't fade, they burned. They burned so long that night, I decided something. If my brother saw me as a burden, I'd show him how heavy the truth could be. People often say the Thompsons were the picture of a perfect family, polite, respected, always smiling in photographs. But if you looked a little closer, you'd see what I saw every single day, smiles built on comparison, and love measured by success. Growing up, Ryan was the golden child. My mother, Evelyn, adored him as if he could do no wrong. "He's the future of this family," she would say, her voice full of pride. And whenever I brought home good grades or tried something new, she'd smile politely and say, "That's nice, Maya, but look at what your brother achieved this week." I learned early that praise had a direction, and it never turned toward me. At family dinners, Ryan would sit at the head of the table beside my father, David, while I served food beside my mother. It wasn't that they meant to make me feel small, it just came naturally to them. Their compliments flowed toward Ryan like a river, and I was just standing at its dry edge. When Ryan got married to Lena, a woman as sharp with words as she was with her lipstick, the imbalance grew. Lena was beautiful, confident, and everything my mother wanted in a daughter-in-law. From the moment she stepped into our home, I became invisible. "Ryan's wife is such a blessing," my mother told the guests. "She completes our family." And I remember thinking, wasn't I part of that family too? Still, I tried to belong. I cooked for them, remembered birthdays, helped my father with paperwork. Every act of love felt like an audition for a role I never got. Even our neighbors admired Ryan, the successful son, the pride of the Thompsons. One evening, during a small reunion, Lena made a joke about me not having direction in life. Everyone laughed. I laughed too, because that's what you do when the people you love make you the punchline. My father gently said, Now, don't tease her," but his voice had no weight. And my mother only said, "Maya knows we're joking." But jokes have a way of sinking into your heart when they are repeated enough times. Sometimes I'd hear my mother and Ryan talking in the kitchen late at night. "She's 28 now," my mother whispered. "We should think about marrying her off. She's just too soft for this world." And Ryan replied with a chuckle, "Mom, no one wants a burden." I stood outside the door, frozen. That word, burden, stayed with me. It wasn't the first time I'd heard it, but it was the first time I believed it. From that night on, I stopped trying to earn their love. But deep inside, something began to stir, a quiet realization that maybe their love wasn't worth chasing. And as the months passed, the cracks beneath our family's perfect image began to show. I didn't know it then, but the night that would destroy our illusion of unity was already on its way. The real cracks began to show after our father's retirement. He had spent 30 years running a small logistics company, nothing massive, but enough to give us a comfortable life. When he finally stepped down, the plan was simple: Ryan would take over, and I'd help with the paperwork from home. But helping quickly turned into being used. Ryan made every decision himself, yet whenever things went wrong, my name appeared on the blame list. "Maya didn't organize the files," he'd complain. "Maya forgot to send the report." It didn't matter that I was the one staying up past midnight to fix his mistakes. At first, I brushed it off. Family means sacrifice, right? But the more I gave, the smaller I became. One morning, I found Ryan and Lena sitting with my parents in the living room. They were discussing the company's future, and I was told to sit down and listen quietly. Ryan leaned back, confidence dripping from every word. "Dad, I think it's time we re-register the business under my name," he said smoothly. "It'll make things easier for future investments." My father hesitated. But the company was started by both of us, son. And Maya. Ryan cut him off, smiling tightly. "Maya doesn't understand business. She's not built for this." Lena added softly, "She's too emotional. It's better to let the men handle it." My mother nodded in agreement, not even looking my way. I wanted to speak, to defend myself, but years of being told to stay quiet pressed against my chest like a weight. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. "Dad, I've been working on the accounts for years. I can handle it." Ryan laughed, that deep, mocking laugh that fills a room and empties your heart. "Handle it? You couldn't even handle your own life, Maya. You're still living here because you can't stand on your own." The words hit harder than I expected. My cheeks burned, but my mother's silence hurt even more than Ryan's cruelty. She just sat there, rearranging her bangles as if she didn't hear him. From that day, things got worse. Ryan began cutting me out of company work altogether. He changed passwords, locked files, and instructed employees not to share information with me. I was erased, not just from the business, but from the family's pride. Then came the final humiliation. It was during a family gathering, a dinner Ryan organized to celebrate his expansion deal. The whole neighborhood was there, including Mrs. Green, our ever-curious neighbor. Ryan stood up mid-meal, raised a glass, and said with a smirk, "Here's to carrying the weight of the family, even when some of us do nothing but drag it down." People laughed. Some looked at me with pity, others avoided my eyes. My throat tightened, but I refused to cry. I simply stared at him, my brother, the man who once held my hand when I was scared of the dark. When the dinner ended, I heard whispers around the table. "She's lucky to have him. She should be grateful he supports her." That night, I sat alone in my room, shaking with quiet rage. I replayed his words over and over until they turned from pain into clarity. The next morning, while cleaning up after the guests, I noticed something strange, a sealed envelope on my father's desk labeled property documents. When I peeked inside, I froze. Ryan's name was written as the sole inheritor. He hadn't just taken my dignity. He was planning to take everything. And that was the moment my silence finally cracked. He thought I was weak because I stayed quiet, but that was the day I decided to make him listen. After that night, I began to see my family differently, not as people I loved, but as people who measured my worth by how little I could say. Every word I spoke felt like an inconvenience, every smile forced. I became the ghost of my own home, walking through rooms filled with voices that never included mine. Ryan's arrogance grew bolder, fed by my silence. He started treating the house like his property, giving orders as if we all worked for him. Even my mother began asking his permission before making decisions. One afternoon, as I was setting the table, I overheard Lena on the phone. "Yes, we're planning to renovate the house soon," she said sweetly. "Ryan's adding an office upstairs." "Maya?" "Oh, she'll probably move out once we're done. It's not like she contributes much." Her words sliced through me, but I said nothing. I just placed the plates down and kept my head low. That evening, during dinner, Ryan announced it openly. I'd decided to expand the house. "Lena and I need more space." He glanced at me. "You can move into Aunt Clara's old place for a while. It'll be good for you. Maybe you'll learn to stand on your own." My father tried to protest. "But Maya's lived here her whole life." "That room." Ryan interrupted. "Dad, she's an adult. It's time she stops depending on everyone." My mother looked at me, her tone careful. "He's right, sweetheart. It's for your own good." I nodded quietly, hiding the tremble in my hands. "If you think that's best, Mom." But inside, something was breaking, not with tears this time, but with fury. Days later, I overheard whispers from relatives at a family lunch. "Poor Maya," one aunt said. "Still unmarried, still living off her brother. Such a shame." Ryan laughed, loud enough for me to hear. "That's what happens when people don't have ambition." Everyone laughed. Everyone, except me. I looked across the table at him, and for the first time, I didn't look away. Our eyes met, and I saw the same boy I once defended in school, now the man who enjoyed crushing me in front of others. His smirk faded when I didn't react. That silence, my silence, began to make him uneasy. At night, I sat by the window, listening to the wind rattle against the panes. My father had grown distant, my mother colder. I started to wonder if being born as a daughter meant being born invisible. Then something unexpected happened. The company accountant came to the house while Ryan was away. "Miss Maya," he said softly, "I thought you should know. Some financial statements are missing." Your father's name is still being used for certain contracts, without his signature.
My heart stopped.
What do you mean? He handed me a folder and whispered, "You didn't hear this from me." After he left, I sat alone staring at those papers. I didn't understand everything, but I knew one thing: Ryan had been hiding something.
Something serious.
That night, I went through his office drawers, quietly, carefully. Receipts, transfers, names I didn't recognize, all signed under my father's authority. My hands shook as I realized the truth. Ryan wasn't just cruel, he was corrupt. For years, he called me a burden. But maybe I was the only one who could expose the real weight dragging our family down. As I held those papers under the dim light, a strange calm filled me.
I didn't cry.
I didn't scream.
I just whispered to myself.
He took everything from me. Now, I'll take back what's mine. And in that quiet moment, my revenge began to breathe. The day it all shattered began like any other. Quiet, ordinary, harmless. I had made breakfast, as usual. My mother sat reading her prayer book, my father scanned the newspaper, and Ryan was on a call bragging about a new investment. There was laughter, casual chatter, until I noticed the sealed envelope on the counter with my name written neatly across it. I opened it without thinking, and the world around me stopped.
It was a legal document.
The company, the house, the land my father worked for, everything was now under Ryan's name.
Not shared, not divided. Just his.
The line that broke me most read, "All inheritance rights are hereby transferred to Ryan Thompson." My hands trembled as I reread it, again and again, hoping it was some cruel mistake. I walked straight to my father's study, clutching the paper so tightly my fingers hurt. "Dad," I whispered, "what is this?"
He looked up, startled.
His eyes darted toward my mother, who had silently followed me in. Ryan walked in last, his tone casual. "Oh, that?
It's just legal formalities. You don't need to worry about it."
Formalities.
My voice cracked. You took everything.
The company, the house, even Dad's share. My mother finally spoke, her voice calm but sharp. "Maya, it's better this way.
You're not involved in business matters. Let Ryan handle it."
It's for stability." "Stability,"
I repeated, my chest tightening.
"Or control?" Ryan's smile widened, that same condescending curve that made my blood run cold.
"Don't make this dramatic, Maya. You've always been taken care of."
"Isn't that enough? You never contributed, so you don't get to claim ownership."
The room fell silent.
I looked from one face to another, searching for anyone, to stand with me.
But all I saw were lowered eyes and folded arms.
Even my father, the one person I thought would protect me, looked away. "You all agreed to this?"
I asked, my voice barely audible. My mother didn't answer.
She just turned toward Ryan and said softly, "We did what's best for the family."
The words echoed in my head like thunder. Best for the family. For them, that family never included me.
I dropped the papers on the desk and walked out, but before I reached the door, Ryan called after me.
"You should be grateful, Maya.
Not everyone gets a roof over their head for free."
That was the moment something inside me broke. Not in anger, in understanding. I finally realized that love here was conditional, and I had failed to meet the condition.
Days turned into weeks of unbearable silence.
No one spoke to me unless it was necessary.
My meals were eaten alone, my presence ignored. Lena made sure to remind me daily how generous Ryan was. "Most sisters would have been out on the street by now," she said once, her smile razor sharp. "You're lucky Ryan still keeps you here."
Lucky. That word felt like poison.
Then came the final blow, the night of Ryan's company gala. He invited family, friends, business partners, everyone who mattered in his perfect world. I wasn't supposed to go, but my mother insisted. "It'll be good for appearances," she said. So I went, dressed in a simple black dress, keeping to the background while they celebrated his leadership and vision. When the speeches began, Ryan stood on stage, glass in hand. His words echoed across the hall. I couldn't have achieved any of this without my family, especially my wife, who's been my rock. He paused, glancing at me briefly before adding, "And of course, some of us choose different paths in life. Some help, some just exist."
Laughter followed.
The audience chuckled politely, unaware that his words were daggers. My mother smiled stiffly, pretending not to notice. I wanted to disappear, but I didn't. I stood there and let every cruel whisper pierce me until the applause drowned them all out. That night, I went home before everyone else. I walked through the empty house, past the photos of our smiling family, past the trophies engraved with Ryan's name. When I reached my room, I closed the door and finally let go. Tears came in waves, shaking my body until I could barely breathe. I screamed into a pillow, not out of sadness anymore, but rage. The kind of rage that doesn't fade, it settles deep in your bones and waits. For hours, I sat on the floor, surrounded by fragments of the only life I'd ever known. Every insult, every dismissal, every stolen piece of respect came flooding back. They had taken everything from me, my home, my identity, my worth. But there was one thing they couldn't take, the truth. The papers I found, the signatures Ryan forged, the accounts under my father's name, I still had copies of them. Hidden, untouched. As the first light of dawn touched the window, I wiped my tears. My heart still hurt, but my mind was calm, frighteningly calm. I whispered to myself, almost as if testing the sound of my own resolve.
They've built their empire on lies.
Now, I'll show them what happens when truth finally wakes up. And that was the moment Maya Thompson died, the silent, obedient daughter. What remained was someone else entirely. Someone who would no longer beg for respect, she would reclaim it. After the night I broke, something in me rearranged. The hollow ache became a tool, precise, cold, and useful.
I stopped asking why and started asking how.
How do you expose a man who built his life on other people's signatures and other people's silence?
How do you make the world listen when your own family looks away?
First, I gathered what I already had. The sealed envelope, the copies of transactions the accountant slid me, and the notes I'd taken while quietly watching Ryan. I stopped living like a ghost and began to move like a shadow, unseen, patient, and steady.
I reached out to Oliver.
He answered on the second ring, surprised but steady.
Maya?
Long time. I need help, I said, my voice small and sure.
Not pity.
Help. You sound different, he replied.
Come by tomorrow.
Bring everything. Oliver knew numbers. More important, he knew how to translate confusing pages into facts that officials, banks, and the right reporters could understand. Ava became my eyes in the house, slipping a USB from a folder, watching who signed what, asking casual questions that sounded like gossip but were actually reconnaissance. You're not alone, she whispered once, pressing a hand to my wrist. We'll do this together.
We built the plan in 3 careful moves.
First, verification. Oliver spent nights tracing transfers, matching dates, and confirming that Dad's name had been used without consent. He didn't hack, he audited, he showed me the holes that honest people could see. The proof began to look less like a rumor and more like a map.
Second, witnesses.
The accountant who confided in me agreed to write a sworn note.
A former employee spoke about orders kept from him.
Ava tracked down neighbors who'd seen odd deliveries and late-night meetings at Ryan's office. Their faces, their memories, became threads we could weave into a pattern. Third, presentation. If I wanted to strike where it hurt, it had to be public, undeniable, and personal.
I could have taken this to a lawyer and let courts do the work. I could have whispered to journalists. But the family that humiliated me had to face the truth in the room where they humiliated me.
I started compiling a short, cinematic presentation, not a smear, but a record. Recordings of insults, scanned documents, witness statements, and Oliver's audit summary. The kind of thing a crowd could understand in one breath. While we worked, I trained myself to be visible again. Mornings I practiced standing in front of the mirror and speaking, not pleading. I rehearsed a single sentence until it felt like armor. Truth doesn't care about your excuses. I practiced calm, breathing, steady footsteps, the way to hold my gaze so it didn't wobble when the room tried to break me.
Ava worried. This could ruin everything, she said one night.
It already ruined everything, I answered. This just makes it true. There were risks. If evidence was dismissed, I'd be exposed as vindictive. If Ryan suspected the leak, he could bury the papers or turn the family further against me. If any part failed, I'd lose more than a home, I'd lose the last shred of privacy and maybe safety. But the risk of staying silent was worse, a lifetime of being invisible while lies prospered. So we rehearsed containment and escalation. Oliver lined up an auditor's affidavit, Ava arranged for the sworn note to reach a trustworthy attorney. I created a family tribute video, a harmless-looking montage that would play at a dinner Ryan would never refuse to attend. Hidden inside it would be the recordings and images that my brother's smile had tried to erase.
On the night before I struck, I didn't sleep.
I watched the house breathe while I cupped the evidence in my lap. My hands no longer trembled with fear, they trembled with history. I whispered to myself, steady and small. Either I walk into that room and break him with truth, or I keep walking away until I disappear.
Tonight I choose to stay. Tomorrow, everyone who watched me fall will watch me stand.
The night of the confrontation unfolded like a scene rehearsed by fate itself. The grand dining hall glowed with golden lights, chandeliers shimmering above the polished mahogany table where every seat carried years of hierarchy and hidden tension. My family had gathered, not for love, but for ceremony. Ryan was set to be announced as the official heir and head of the family trust. I was merely invited as a gesture, a spectator to my own erasure. As I walked in, heads turned. My mother's eyes darted away, Ryan smirked faintly, and my father, frail, silent, a ghost of his former authority, sat at the head of the table, his hand trembling slightly as he lifted a glass. Finally, Ryan said, his voice smooth as silk and sharp as glass. We can move forward. No more family drama, right, Maya? I smiled, small, deliberate. No more lies, Ryan. He chuckled, dismissing me. The lawyer beside him began to read from a folder, words about succession, trust, property. Each phrase tightened around my chest like a rope. I could hear Ava's whisper in my memory, wait for the moment. Let them walk right into it. When the lawyer finished, applause followed, shallow, automatic. That's when I rose. Before we toast, I said, calm and clear, I prepared something. A little tribute to our family. To honesty, to legacy.
Ryan frowned.
Maya, this isn't. It'll only take 5 minutes, I cut in gently. After all, what's a legacy without truth?
I walked to the projector. The room dimmed.
The first few seconds were harmless, family photos, smiling faces, birthday candles.
My father even smiled faintly. Then the tone shifted.
A screenshot appeared, forged signatures. Bank statements. Transfers marked with Ryan's name.
Laughter around the table froze mid-breath.
What the hell is this? Ryan barked, pushing back his chair. Evidence, I said softly. Every transaction you hid under Dad's name. Every deal you made behind this family's back. Gasps filled the room. My mother stood up, eyes wide, whispering, Ryan, tell me this isn't true.
Ryan turned pale. You think I'd fake that? She's lying. She's been bitter for years. I clicked again.
A recording played, Ryan's voice, crystal clear. Don't worry, Mom will sign whatever I put in front of her.
She never reads anything. Maya?
She's too emotional to matter. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream.
My father's hand shook as he removed his glasses.
You used my name, he said, his voice cracking with age and disbelief. You used this family's trust for yourself. Ryan's mask fell. He slammed the table, shouting, You all think she's some saint?
She's been spying on me. I met his fury with quiet steel.
I wasn't spying. I was watching, the way you watched me fall and smiled. Tears welled in my mother's eyes. Maya tried to tell us, and we didn't listen.
Because you never wanted to, I replied.
You raised us to believe love was earned through obedience. Ryan just learned to lie better than I learned to beg. The lawyer, clearly shaken, gathered his papers. These documents are legitimate. The signatures, the transfers, this could be fraud.
Ryan turned desperate.
Dad, please. But my father's eyes, once blind with trust, had cleared with truth. You're done, Ryan, he said coldly. Everything you took will be returned. The name you carried, it's no longer yours to bear.
I felt no triumph, only release.
The truth had weight, and now it sat on the table where I had once been invisible. Ryan's voice broke into rage. You ruined me, Maya. No, I said quietly, stepping closer so only he could hear.
You ruined yourself.
I just stopped cleaning up after you. He lunged forward, security moved, voices rose, my mother sobbed. And through the chaos, my father's trembling voice cut through. Enough.
The room froze.
He turned to me,
eyes filled with both regret and pride. "You were right, Maya. I should have seen you, all along." For a moment, the silence was holy. I looked around, at the walls that had witnessed every insult, every dismissal. At the people who once silenced me now staring as if seeing me for the first time. The ache inside me softened, not from their guilt, but from my own freedom. I walked to the door, pausing under the chandelier's light. "This house was built on secrets," I said. "Tonight, it finally has a foundation strong enough for truth." And as I stepped out, leaving Ryan's shattered pride and my father's repentance behind, I felt the first breath of peace, sharp, clean, and real. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it whispers just loud enough for everyone to hear. The days after the confrontation were eerily quiet. For the first time, the Thompson house stood still. No laughter, no music, no false smiles to hide behind. Truth had entered like a storm and left everything stripped bare. I didn't go back there again. There was nothing left to collect, no belongings, no memories worth saving. What I needed, I had already taken back the night I spoke my truth. My voice. News spread fast in our circle. Ryan was removed from all family business accounts. My father's lawyer froze the assets and launched a full audit. My mother avoided the neighbors, her once proud face now dimmed by guilt. The same people who had once looked through me now whispered about me with a strange mix of respect and pity. But I wasn't looking for their sympathy. I was looking for peace. I rented a small apartment across town, quiet, sunlit, filled with the kind of silence that doesn't hurt. Every morning, I made coffee and watched the sunrise, letting its gold light wash away the gray years that had lived inside me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't fighting for approval. I was just existing, on my own terms. Sometimes I thought about my father. He tried to reach out once, a short message. "I'm proud of you, Maya. You reminded us what truth looks like." I never replied, but I kept the message. Not because I wanted reconciliation, but because it reminded me that change, even when born from pain, can still plant something pure. Ryan disappeared from public view. The empire he built on lies began to crumble, one piece at a time. And my mother, she sent flowers once, with a card that read, "Forgive me, if you can." Forgiveness. Such a simple word for something so heavy. I realized forgiveness isn't about letting people back in. It's about letting yourself move forward without carrying their weight anymore. One evening, I visited the old family estate. The gates were rusted, the garden untrimmed. Standing there, I felt no anger, just clarity. That place had once held my pain captive, but now it was just bricks, windows, and silence. I whispered to the empty air. "You taught me everything I needed to know, how not to love blindly, how not to beg for respect." The wind carried my words away, soft and freeing. As I turned to leave, I thought of all those years I spent trying to prove my worth, to be seen, to be chosen, to be enough. But dignity, I learned, doesn't come from others. It comes from the moment you stop asking for it. That was my justice, not revenge, not punishment. Just peace. In the end, every family has its secrets, its shadows. But truth, no matter how long it hides, always finds a way to the surface. Mine did. And when it did, I didn't rise with fury, I rose with grace. Before leaving the estate for the last time, I said the words that had been waiting all my life to be spoken. Respect is not something you earn from others, it's something you refuse to lose, even when they take everything else. And with that, I walked away. Not as the forgotten daughter, not as the family's mistake, but as someone who finally remembered her own worth. Because in the end, silence after truth isn't emptiness, it's freedom.